Good morning, Baker Econ students. It is Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. So how about those Chiefs? Got to celebrate that, right? So if you're a Chiefs fan, I assume a lot of you around here are Chiefs fan. Your professor is predicting a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl. So I grew up not too far from Philadelphia, but I'm still more of a Chiefs fan than a Philly fan. But we'll see what happens. A lot of football to be played yet. So anyway, great job again with the forum discussion. Just keep doing that. I'll see if I can get to everybody this week. I have a little less going on this week, but again, may take turns between the 2 weeks. But the course is moving quickly. You guys are already halfway done with the course, being a 7-week course. So just keep plugging along and make sure you get everything wrapped up for the week and get that posted. I'll get everything graded by Tuesday. So for this week, obviously, again, you have the forum discussion, you have the MyLab quiz, and I want you to start, thinking about the common assessment, the company you want to analyze. I definitely want to suggest using a company that is publicly traded, so it's more easy to find a lot of your research information. But pick something that you're interested in doing research on, and it can be something you really like, something you're interested in learning more about, or a potential company maybe you want to work for someday, or that type of company. So I'm open to any topics that you'd like to choose, and if you have any questions, do shoot me an email, and be happy to answer those. So, and that's coming up towards the end of the course, but it's good to kind of take it in steps, so you're not doing so much the last week. So this week we have 2 chapters. Chapter 11. You're going to start looking at production functions and the concept of diminishing marginal return. So essentially, the idea is that we can't expect to have like a fixed level of inputs and just keep adding a resource such as labor, and then production is going to go up infinitely or exponentially. That's not realistic. We're going to have to see kind of these production functions get to a maximum and then start to level off unless we could acquire more resources. So the big thing you're going to be looking at this chapter is, how are these cost curves derived? And the reason they have the U shape to them is because of that diminished marginal productivity. It's unrealistic to just think that you have a garden. I just keep adding fertilizer and fertilizer. It's going to just produce more carrots and peas and vegetables. Well, that's not realistic. So, especially in a combined space. So, in fact, you probably make the soil pretty acidic, and your vegetable production will go down. So, but that's what managers look at a lot. It's trying to be technically and economically efficient, trying to produce the most output. And this chapter in particular is going to say, hey, with these concepts of diminishing marginal productivity, we can track, the different types of costs that involve. There's also going to be some fixed costs. This is if you produce nothing at all, you still have to pay a lease, perhaps, is a good example, or a minimum what we call like working capital just to get things started. But then as I add things such as labor and more materials, we're going to have variable costs that come in the production of the goods and service. So you're going to be tracking that and looking at those calculations. So you're going to have such things as average total cost, which is total cost divided by Q, or the quantity. And you're going to have average variable cost, which is all the variable cost divided by quantity. And you're going to have average fixed cost, which is all the fixed cost divided by quantity. That's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, like we call spreading of overhead cost. But we'll never actually touch that horizontal axis because we're just taking that same number, say 1,000 divided by increasing units, so it just gets smaller and smaller. And you're going to look at these graphical relationships. You're going to see that the average total cost curve and average variable cost curve are going to start getting closer and closer together, because that's the difference, is the average fixed cost. And then marginal cost, by definition, is the change in total cost divided by the change in Q. And the marginal cost curve is going to intersect at the lowest point of the average variable cost and the average total cost curve. So you're going to spend a lot of time studying those cost curves, because when we start to get into market structures, you're going to start asking yourself, say, hey, where's my price relative to these costs? And that will lead to other, decisions about how we're doing. Are we making a good profit? Are we, what we call like exceeding all the explicit and implicit cost? Implicit cost would be opportunity cost. If you think about like in finance, if you've taken that, you've calculated the weighted average cost of capital, but a firm maybe should be making at least an 8% rate of return. And if you're not meeting the opportunity cost. But it doesn't mean that you're not meeting the accounting cost. You might be making a 2% rate of return, but based on what your investors expect, you're not getting there. So you have to make some types of changes to reduce cost. And that's what we kind of saw a lot this week. If you've been following the news at all, with like Microsoft and the tech firms, they've been laying off a lot of employees because they're trying to appease the shareholders and they're trying to look for that right next bet. You know, a lot of these companies like Amazon and Microsoft and they made a lot of money, but it's like as leadership and managers are trying to decide, okay, well, what's the next best bet? Where do I want to put this money, or get out of things that aren't meeting that opportunity cost, meeting the implicit required return? So it'll be interesting to see what some of these companies do. Chapter 16, you're going to focus on labor. One of the big concepts in this chapter is obviously the marginal revenue product of labor. You know, let's think about, as I add a worker, how much output increased and how much am I selling this product or service for. I like to use sports analogy, but pretty quickly you can see on a football field or a baseball team who adds value and who does not add value. Like, well, we paid this much money for this player, it was worth that amount of money, like a Patrick Mahomes. But other players you bring on and they don't contribute as much, and you see it pretty quickly. Now, most of us are not analyzed like that at the workplace. You don't have thousands of people observing every step and everything you do in your job every day to see that you're productive or not. But managers make evaluations about how productive you are, whether you're adding value to the bottom line. But you're also going to look at what shifts this market demand curve for labor. That can be various factors such as human capital as that improves, can shift the market demand curve for labor, improvements in technology that make workers more efficient, a change in the price. And that's kind of a little bit what we've seen right now. The labor market's being so tight and prices going up. I always kind of view inflation as there's people that win and lose. So if you're selling oil at higher prices, you're winning from that. It's the people like us that have to pay for it that are losing. But I might be more inclined to hire more oil workers as the price goes up. And then the changing in the inputs, new technologies can make us more productive. And obviously, increasing number of firms can also put pressure through competition to increase labor. But one of the things about supplying your labor, when you look at the supply side, there's the concepts known as the substitution effect that says, hey, if you're starting to pay me a higher wage, I may actually work more hours and work more time. Then there's an income effect that says, well, if I'm making enough money, that I can actually work less. And the textbook gives the example, like a musician, that if they're making $5,000 for a concert, maybe they do $50 a year. But if they're making $50,000 for a concert, well, maybe only do $20 a year because I got plenty of money and I'm happy. For a lot of us, it's a question of how much money is enough money. And then do you keep working more and more? So again, as I begin this course, I said it's a choice between consumption, work, and leisure. And hopefully, you're making good choices with that to maximize your level of utility. So. Last thing I'll just wrap up with this is you're going to go through some different interesting concepts that economists have studied relative to labor, especially, with wages, why are there different wages, or even perhaps discrimination. It's definitely something we need to address. Even the economics kind of question, why does this exist? You would not be making a good choice to discriminate in these ways, because it actually could cause certain workers' wages to be out of whack, if you will. You're paying more for certain individuals that you don't need to. So it's interesting these things still exist, but we can look at these statistically to look at differences. But really, society would be better off if we correct these discrimination practices. So I always kind of think like there are different levels of discrimination in economics. One might just be from personality type, and that'd be if you have a bad personality or not very good with people, you're probably going to be a server or work in a restaurant. There might be characteristics of groups, like if you're a group of teenagers, we could maybe say they're not as reliable and as dependent. But it's that kind of that third type that deals with sex, religion, age, that really shouldn't exist. That we said we need to make policies and think about how companies try to correct these things, and there's been a lot of recognition of that lately. So anyway, you all have a great week. If you do have any questions, do email me. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to your post later this week, and I'll jump in and engage in discussion. So have a great week. Take care.